Hello and welcome into another episode of Locked On Wolves. Today on the show, continuing the series on the quarter pole of the Timberwolves season. Today, digging in this year's offense versus last year's. What's different? What's better? What to look out for on the horizon? Could the offense hit a wall at some point when the competition gets tougher? We'll break it all down next.
You are Locked On Timberwolves, your daily Minnesota Timberwolves podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Wolves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Happy Thursday, everybody. We're just a day away from a Timberwolves game. Finally, weird that they have the middle 3 days of the week off here today. Today on the show, we're digging in. We are just a little past the quarter pole of the season, a little more than 25% of the way through the schedule. And yesterday on the show, we talked about what's different about the Timberwolves defense, why it's struggled at times this year, what's most obviously, I guess, different, the good, the bad, the ugly, things that are sustainable, things that are not. We're going to do the same thing today with the offense. The offense is pretty in line with where it was last year, but they're going about it in a slightly different way. We'll break down what I mean by that. Some things that I may be a little bit concerned about as the competition gets harder. Yes, the Timberwolves schedule does get harder. They've had some of the fewest back-to-backs in the league to this point. They've played a relatively easy schedule overall in terms of opponent strength of schedule based on opponents. So what to look out for here as we move ahead. And obviously the Wolves are right in the middle of a packed Western Conference as of right now. First, though, a big thank you off the top for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every single day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere. That includes YouTube as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. Wherever you like to listen to podcasts, you can find Locked On Wolves. All right, first, what I always do is look at the four factors and compare the two. And with the defense, there were a couple things that were pretty different, but the rebounding and the free throw rate were the most concerning things. The turnover rate, a little flukier. And so on the offensive end, it's the same categories, right? It's offensive rebound rate, it's offensive free throw rate, and it is offensive turnover rate. And then it's effective field goal percentage. By and large, the numbers are nearly identical to where the Timberwolves finished last year. Last season, they were 8th in the league in free throw rate. This year, they're also 8th. Weirdly enough, 2 years ago, they were 8th as well. That means a lot of different things in terms of the actual rate. So like when it was all said and done last year, the Wolves were averaging 19.9 free throw attempts per 100 field goal attempts. That was 8th in the league. They're currently 8th, and it's actually 24 per 100 field goal attempts, meaning there's a lot more free throws being shot so far this year than the full season last year. The offensive rebound rate, remember a couple years ago, the first couple years of Chris Finch, this team, at least the first full years of Chris Finch, this team did not offensive rebound the ball. It was more about getting back in transition, and he did not preach offensive rebounding. That shifted around the first of the year, this calendar year, middle of last season, and Minnesota finished the season top half of the league in offensive rebound rate. Right now, they're 16th. They finished last year 14th. They're 29.5% offensive rebound rate right now, which is 16th in the league. So, right in line with last year. The turnover rate, a little higher than it should be. That's been the name of the game in the Chris Finch era. In fact, the Wolves have not finished in the top half of the league in terms of offensive rebound rate since 2018-19, which was, I think, the year Tibbs was fired in, if I'm not mistaken. Or it might have been Brian Saunders' only full year. Is that right? 1920 was his only full year. I think that was the year that Tibbs was fired in midway through the season. The last 7 seasons, Minnesota's had a bottom half of the league turnover rate. In every year under Chris Finch, easily. This year, they're 18th. Last year, they were 18th. 15% turnover rate. So that's all the same. The only differences are the pace the Wolves are playing at, which is not part of the four factors, so we'll dig into that. And then also their effective field goal percentage. They're actually right now 5th in the NBA, coming into play on Wednesday with a 56.9% effective field goal percentage, which compared to all these full season marks, it's the best effective field goal percentage the team's ever had in history. The next best was, half percentage point lower. That was 2 years ago under Chris Finch. Currently 5th in the league. That's the only four factor that's dramatically different. And I want to talk about that, but I want to start with pace. That's the first thing that sticks out to me. So if you just go on Basketball Reference, which, so those numbers I was just giving, the four factors numbers, were actually from Cleaning the Glass. I prefer that for a number of different stats. Basketball Reference has an easy pace statistic. Right now, Minnesota's 16th in the NBA in pace. Last season, they were 24th. The year before that, they were 24th as well. So they've increased the pace a little bit, according to Basketball Reference, and Cleaning the Glass has some slightly different metrics that you can compare to look at that. The way they break it down is the frequency with which teams run. So the frequency of transition, the frequency of their possessions starting with a transition play is up to nearly 15% this year, which is a percentage and a half higher than it was last year. It's 22nd in the league. Last year, they were 27th. The year before, they were 28th. They're running more frequently overall. It's only slightly. They're still in the bottom third of the league. But if you drill down a bit further, they were 17th in the league in running off of steals last year. They're 8th in the league this year. 70% of the time off of steals they run. And the bigger difference has actually been running off of rebounds. The last 2 seasons, Minnesota was dead last in running off of, I said offensive rebounds, or maybe I said live rebounds, defensive rebounds, right? Barely more than 20% of the time did the Timberwolves actually run out in transition off of defensive rebounds, which is extremely rare in the NBA. This year, they're 21st, over 28% of the time. So closer to a third of the time instead of a fifth of the time, they're running off of defensive rebounds. So overall, the number hasn't lifted that much, but when you drill down, it's becoming a more frequent occurrence for this team. And the more important number is how successful they've been. And I believe it's sustainable because of the personnel, first of all, and also because they've shown that. Even when they didn't run that much last 2 years, when they did run, they actually ranked in the top third of the league in most cases in points per play. Points per play, but points per 100 plays, 100 transition plays. So this year they're 6th in the league, 134 points per 100 transition plays, 6th in the league, 7th in points plus per 100 possessions, or points added per 100 possessions. So they're running a little bit more, and they're doing it at a more successful rate. I'd love to, coming into the season, I thought that would be the case. I talked about this preseason. A lot of that was due to, I thought TJ Shannon would play more. I thought Rob Dillingham would play more. Hasn't really been the case. They've just overall ran more frequently. Julius Randle's been a part of pushing the pace. We know Ant generally likes to slow things down, but overall, the pace has increased, and it's not necessarily because the personnel is dramatically different, and it's not. It really is just the Nickeil Alexander-Walker role being filled differently, and not exactly being filled the way that we thought it would be at this stage either. So that, I think, also contributes to the higher effective field goal percentage. There's a lot of factors at play here, and so I want to dig in on that a bit, like the different layers to why the effective field goal percentage is higher. I do think there's some luck involved. I think it's half-court shot selection, but I also think it's the increase in pace. So that's the part I wanted to hit now. I just think, obviously transition's the most efficient play type. You're going to get the most looks at the rim. I mean, some of those are going to be uncontested dunks and layups. Those matter. Those count. They're the most efficient shot in basketball. And even when they're not uncontested, a lot of the times those attempts are at the rim or they're wide open threes. Pushing hit-ahead passes to the corners, trail threes, whatever the case might be, pick and rolls out of a secondary break that still counts as a transition possession. Those are your most effective shots. You're not shooting mid-range jumpers in transition. It just doesn't happen. And so therefore, more transition and effective transition means more overall efficient offense for the Timberwolves. And that has been the case. The effective field goal percentage, again, is fifth best in the league. Fifth best in the league. Nearly 57%. It was 12th best last year, 10th best the year before that. And it's been good under Chris Finch. Part of that is the shot mix, more threes, less mid-range jumpers. But the one thing that I'm a little concerned about is the mid-range jumpers, because those have gone up and they're shooting them at a really high clip. We'll talk about that next. We'll also dig in on some of the different half-court play types we're seeing the Timberwolves use more of this season versus some they're using less of. We'll do all that here next. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our friends at Game Time. The World Cup is coming back to North America for the first time since 1994, and with 48 teams for the first time ever, it's going to be massive. But let's be honest, getting tickets is usually the hardest part, and that's why the Game Time app is clutch, finally giving fans a real advantage when it comes to snagging seats. With Game Time, you can track price drops in real time, get alerts when great seats open, and buy tickets the moment that they hit the app. It puts the power back in your hands and makes going to the World Cup realistic instead of impossible. It's really simple to use. You just pull up the app. The layout makes it very easy to scroll through matchups and compare seat views. The seat view feature is my favorite. It's a game changer. You can literally see what the field, the court, the pitch, in the case of the World Cup, looks like from your exact seats before you buy. You can also see all the price The price is including fees up front, so there's no last-second surprises at checkout. Take the guesswork out of buying World Cup tickets and every match, concert, or event with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, download the app, make an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Game Time. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is also brought to us by our friends at Quo. New year, new systems. And this is the time when a lot of us look at the messier parts of running a business and think there has to be a better way. And there is. Today's episode is brought to you by Quo, spelled Quo, the smarter way to run your business communications. If you're ready to make your workday smoother and keep customers connected without the headaches, Quo makes upgrading your setup easier than ever. A streamlined system makes such a big difference when communicating with your customers. Having calls, texts, and voicemails in one clean view keeps everything organized and helps you stay responsive. It's surprisingly easy. You can work from your phone or your computer, keep your existing number, and add teammates in minutes. Make this the year where no opportunity and no customer slips away. Try Quo for free. Plus, get 20% off your first 6 months when you go to quo.com/LockedOnNBA. That's QUO.com/LockedOnNBA. Quo, no missed calls, no missed customers. Okay. A big thank you again for making Locked On Wolves your first listen of the day. And of course, a big thank you for helping make us the #1 sports podcast network. You already live your team every day. Now you can take it up a level and go ad free. Join the Everydayer Club today and get Locked On Wolves with no interruptions, members only Discord access, and more, all for just $5 a month or $50 a year. Go to lockedonwolves.supercast.com. Check the link in the show notes to learn more. Again, that is lockedonwolves.supercast.com. And we'll talk at the end of the show about a way you can get the first month free of your Everydayer Club. So stay tuned for that at the end of the show today. All right. So we talked about the Timberwolves. They're playing at a faster pace, which is helping lead to a generally more efficient offense. Now, they're going about it in a different way. They're shooting less three-pointers than they did last season, which is unusual for this team. Last season, and I'll use the basketball reference number, it's easy. Last season, Minnesota was, if you want to use 3-point rate, they were 6th in the league in 3-point rate, and they were 4th in percentage. Okay, 6th in 3-point rate, 4th in percentage. This year, they're still 4th in percentage, but they're 11th in 3-point rate. And if you want to just look at 3-point attempts per game, they're actually 14th, but because they're playing at a slightly higher pace, the rate-based stats are my preference for breaking this down. So they're 11th in rate after being, 11th in rate after being 5th in rate last season. They're shooting three-pointers at a similar clip. Again, 4th both last year and this year. The mid-range shots, though, they're shooting at a higher, both a higher rate and a higher clip. So let's see. Let me look at the overall, I guess, their league ranking. So this year, if you just want to look at all mid-range shots, they're 18th in the league. So nearly 29% of their shots are from the mid-range. Last year, they were 26% of their shots from the mid-range. Now, they're also making those shots. They are, from the mid-range, they're shooting 42.5%, which is actually 21st, but it's better than last year when they were under 40%. So they're shooting nearly 3% better from the mid-range. And there's a couple of guys that are off the charts. Like, you could drill down. I mean, Anthony Edwards, mid-range and at the rim, I should say. Like, his frequency and accuracy's gone up in both areas. His frequency at the rim is up from last year. His frequency from 3 to 10 feet is up from last year. From 10 to 16 feet is up from last year. Really, it's up everywhere and down slightly from outside the arc. And the percentage for Ant is also up 3 to 10 feet, 0 to 3 feet. Ant is shooting 81% from within 3 feet of the rim, which is absurd and obviously unsustainable for his career, including this year. He's 68%. He was 68% last year. He's 71% the year before. He'd never been above 67% before that. So expect some of that to come down a little bit. From 3 to 10 feet, he's shooting a career high 47%. And from 10 to 16 feet, he's shooting 44%, which is just a shade below his career best. His career best 2 years ago. So all of that, more frequency and more accuracy from the mid-range. Is it fluky? Is it because it's the thing Ant worked on? With Ant, I lean more towards it's the thing Ant worked on. Remember last offseason, summer of 24, it was all about the three-point shot. And what did he do last year? He led the league in makes and attempts from outside the arc, shot 40% for most of the season. I think dipped to 39.5% when it was all said and done. But he worked on what he said he'd work on, and he excelled at it. That's what's happened this season. Now, for the other guys on the team, I'm not as convinced. I mean, like Jaden McDaniels has gotten better from the short, the within 10 feet. Like he's shooting 74% at the rim, which is up a little from last year. He's shooting a career best 49, actually second best of his career, 49.4% from 3 to 10 feet. But the volume, of course, is up from there. He's just, the usage rate is up. He's getting to within 10 feet more often. Jaden, I tend to believe it a little bit, although he's been a lot more up and down over his 5+ years in the league now. And some of the other guys, it might be a little bit fluky. So I worry a little about the overall uptick in mid-range shots, but I'm encouraged that a big piece of it is Anthony Edwards, who, I think we should just believe when he says he wants to be really good at something, because it turns out he is. Now, if that thing could be consistently playing with effort, off-ball defense, and running the offense, some of those things that we can nitpick about, it's still incredible. I don't want to nitpick. I guess I did for 5 seconds there, but clearly, he puts his mind to something, says he's going to do it, he does it. And that's what's happening here in the mid-range, I believe. So I think that factors in. The overall increase in mid-range shooting is a little bit scary. But that's a little bit offset actually by some of the problems they're having converting offensive rebounds. This was a little bit surprising to me. The offensive rebound rate, again, as I said earlier, is in line with where it was last year. It's within a couple tenths of a percentage point, but they're converting off of offensive rebounds at a lower rate. It's partly a Rudy Gobert stat. And we could point to, actually Rudy's shooting the ball really well at the rim, as he should, but, compared to where, actually, let me just grab so Rudy's actually shooting almost 74% this year. I think it's more of a Rudy pass out off of an offensive rebound turnover rate issue than anything else. But overall, the Timberwolves are converting on offensive rebounds much less frequently. Last season, the Timberwolves are 4th in the league in points scored per 100 putback plays, which is anything that results in a shot, turnover, or free throws off of an offensive rebound. They were 4th best in the league. This year, they're 17th, almost 5 points less per 100 putback plays. That's significant. Another way to look at that would be points per 100 missed field goals / reboundable free throws. They were 6th last year. They're 16th this year. So they're converting less frequently with less success off of offensive rebound opportunities in the half court. So that's offsetting some of the uptick in the mid-range. Which is real, which is fake? I don't know. That's what we're trying to figure out. That's the tough thing. Overall, the offense is very similar to what it was last year. It's slightly better because they're making more shots overall. I worry about the mid-range thing a little bit more than I think. I don't know. I actually do think they offset pretty nicely. I think the Wolves will start to shoot a little worse from the mid-range, but I also think they'll start to convert a little bit better off of offensive rebounds. I think both numbers are a little bit skewed early in the season. And I'm curious to see what that looks like, in another 20, 30 games. But my hunch is it's going to even out a little bit, and it's going to look a lot like what it did last year. And the shot mix probably isn't going to change dramatically. I think the Wolves just shoot more mid-range and less three right now, and I don't think that's overall a good thing. It could be a good thing situationally. Obviously, you have to have that in your bag, and for Anthony Edwards, it's vital. But as a team, what's this going to look like in March? So I have a little bit of concern there, but I wanted to point that out. I want to close today by looking at some of the different play types in the half court. We're going to talk about the areas that the Wolves, the play. What I mean by that is like pick and rolls versus handoffs versus, how frequently they cut versus isolation, the frequency of those areas, those play types in the half court, and then also the level of success that they do or don't have in each of them as we further break down this Wolves offense at the quarter pole of the season. We'll do that here next to close out the show today. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our new friends at Zocdoc. Guys, it's 2025, almost 2026. And those days of waiting for something to become a full-blown emergency before you see a doctor, they're over. No more walking it off for 6 months or pretending that weird shoulder stiffness is just sleeping wrong. It's time to take your health seriously. And Zocdoc makes that easier than ever because staying healthy is more than hitting the gym or eating right. It's about actually getting these things checked out when something feels off. You can use Zocdoc to make your scheduling easier. Search for in-network doctors and book right in the app. The real appointment times are listed too, including same-day visits. It lets you compare providers using real patient reviews, not ads, and it makes it simple to keep your health a priority, even with a busy schedule. You can use it to schedule appointments quickly when you don't want to wait weeks. It's something I haven't been great at in the past. But look, there's no excuses. Zocdoc makes it extremely easy. Stop putting off your doctor's appointments and get the care that you need. Go to Zocdoc.com/LockedOnNBA to find and instantly book a top-rated doctor today. That's ZocDoc.com/LockedOnNBA. Zocdoc.com/LockedOnNBA. All right, let's talk half-court play types for the Wolves this year. A few weeks ago, we talked a little bit about this when I just kind of did when we talked zone, it was maybe 3 weeks ago. But I wanted to check back in and just kind of see what areas are the Wolves finding success in offensively and what areas are they not. So, like, for instance, isolation. They play a lot in isolation. Why? Well, that's obvious. Anthony Edwards, Julius Randle. When you look at individual players, and actually I think I have this in front of me. Individual players, isolation, like if we just want to drill down there, in terms of frequency, Anthony Edwards is 5th in the league in frequency of isolation plays. 24% of his offensive plays are coming in isolation. The only players ahead of him are James Harden, Davion Mitchell, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and then actually J-Dub, who's only played 5 games, Jalen Williams for the Thunder. So take him out. Okay, or Ant is 2 OKC players. Take J-Dub out because he's only played 5 games. Ant is 4th in the league in frequency of isolation plays. Julius Randle's 11th, 18.8% of the time. Now, in terms of success rate, it's not quite that good. In fact, it's gotten worse here lately. Like SGA is still very good. I'd want to put in a few filters here to like really get a good sense for it because there's a bunch of guys like on Synergy, like Tyler Hero's played in 6 games. So of course that's going to look really good. So I don't necessarily want to dig too much on that. But if you look at the team frequency and success rate in isolation, Minnesota still is a top 5 team in terms of the frequency of their possessions taking place in isolation. They're currently 5th. The numbers actually come down a little bit here lately. The Clippers, Rockets, Heat, and Sixers are the teams ahead of the Wolves. They're just ahead of the Thunder, Celtics, Lakers, and then it gets into Pelicans and Kings. So by and large, these are good teams. I mean, the Clippers are not, but the Rockets, the Heat, the Sixers have been good. Obviously, OKC, Boston's still been good. The Lakers have been good. So you look at the top, what is that? The top 8 teams in terms of frequency of isolation, and 6 of them, actually 7 of them, are likely playoff teams. And the Clippers were supposed to be good. And this is just James Harden being James Harden, which is why that number is so high. And then in terms of success rate, that's dipped a little bit as well. They're 12th in points per possession in isolation. Of course, OKC's first. The Clippers, but believe it or not, are actually 5th. Their problem has mostly been defense, and any sort of non-isolation possessions have been miserable. But the best teams in isolation, Thunder, Nuggets, Lakers, Heat, all good offenses. Then Clippers, then Bucks, Celtics, Knicks, Cavs, Bulls, who have been struggling lately, but were good for a while. And then the Jazz, weirdly. And then the Wolves are 12th in terms of success rate, 0.936 points per possession in isolation. And this is mostly Ant and Julius Randle. So they do it a lot, and they're good at it. It's a little bit different from what we saw last year. We've seen a little bit more of Julius Randle in isolation. I'm going to pull up last year's number really quick. Last year, the frequency for Minnesota was 8th in the league, and it was 8.1% of the time. Okay, so they went from 8th in the league and 8.1% of the time to 5th in the league and 9.7% of the time so far this season. That could still change, but the overall frequency has increased a little bit, and actually so has the success rate. Last year, their success rate, they were 22nd in points per possession, just over 0.86 points per possession in isolation, so not nearly as good there. So they're doing it more, and they're better at it. Pick and rolls, on the other hand, they're not doing very often at all. So far this season, Minnesota's actually 27th in frequency of pick and roll plays ended by a pick and roll ball handler. Okay, so you can obviously look at the roll man as well. The Wolves don't toss it to the roll man all that often. I guess Rudy, they actually should give it to Rudy more on the short roll. I think he's actually a pretty good decision maker there on the short roll, kicking the ball to the corners, stopping and kicking, reversing it back out to the perimeter above the break. For the most part, I think he's pretty good at that. But the possessions used by the Timberwolves pick and roll ball handler are just 12.4% of the time. That's 27th in the NBA. However, they're actually pretty good at it when they do it. They're 10th, 0.944 points per possession behind a bunch of really good teams. In fact, everybody except the Pacers ahead of them is a good playoff team. Spurs, Celtics, Suns, Knicks, Pistons, Thunder, Nuggets, Lakers, like all these teams that are good in the pick and roll are really good teams, except for the Pacers. They're the outlier. Minnesota's 10th in the league in the points per possession as pick and roll ball handlers and individual players. I'm not going to drill into that today. That's something we could do in the future, but not having a point guard certainly contributes to that. The lack of frequency that they do it. Ant is much better off the handoff. And I've said this for years about Anthony Edwards. It's pretty obvious that he thrives in handoff situations. Why? Well, when he was younger, he's still obviously very young, but earlier in his career, it was largely due to when you come off a pick and roll, there's more to think about, right? You're surveying the floor. You're thinking, do I hit the roll man? Do I hesitate? Do I pop it? Do I shoot immediately? Do I swing the ball? Do I drive? Do I drive and kick? When you're coming off a handoff, like it functions essentially like a pick and roll, but it feels like there's less of a decision, right? Because off of a handoff, the roll is usually a little bit different. It's not as direct. You're less likely to dump the ball to the roll man off of a handoff than you are, especially when it's Rudy Gobert, because of the spacing on the floor. The angle that you're getting the handoff, you're angled towards the rim, and your momentum's carrying you toward the rim, which is, it gets Ant downhill. And that's what was so good for him when he was younger. And it continues to be a really, really good play type for Anthony Edwards for all those reasons. It gets his momentum going toward the rim. Timberwolves are number one in the NBA in points per possession off of handoff situations, 1.17 points per possession. And they're seventh in frequency, 5.6% of the time. Okay. So they're number one in points per possession on handoff situations. And actually, I haven't even looked at last year's. I'll pull it up now and see, but I bet it's similar. They were 10th last year, so still top 10, not quite as good. And then if you want to talk about individual players on the offensive end of the floor, points per possession, I guess that gets a little trickier here because of the rate stuff. But actually, believe it or not, Anthony Edwards is still second in the league, regardless of like how frequency these guys are doing it. So like number one is actually Corey Kispert with the Wizards. He's doing it 0.6 times a game, or 0.6 possessions a game. Okay, so barely. Ant's doing it more than twice a game at 1.62 points per possession. So more of that, please. Anthony Edwards is fantastic off of handoffs in the half court. It allows him to get his momentum going downhill and make decisions, easier, or, less decisions to make. So that's what I want to see more of in the Timberwolves half court. And obviously, if they had a point guard that functioned like a point guard and was somewhat of a threat off the dribble, which like Mike Conley is not, right? Teams know he doesn't want to shoot the basketball off the dribble really ever, but especially off the dribble. So they can play pick and roll in a way that's advantageous for them. They can worry about other guys and give Conley space and play the role and play the guys in the corner because they know Conley is ultimately going to give the ball up. Dillingham just isn't effective and doesn't make the right decisions. And DiVincenzo's not a point guard and he's not a great passer, not a great decision maker in the half court with the ball in his hands. So because of all these things, the Timberwolves are just better as a handoff team because of Rudy's skill set. He's really good at it. He's a wide body. He's good at effectively setting a screen when he does a handoff with Ant. And Ant is so good in that two-man game. So something to keep an eye on moving forward. Overall, what I worry about the most is the shot mix leaning mid-range and that coming back to earth a little bit. But I'm hopeful that could be combated. Any sort of a regression to the mean there could be combated by an improvement in scoring off of offensive rebounds. I think that's a real possibility here moving forward. So all of that is something to watch for here as we get into the middle portion of the NBA season, get past the NBA, the Emirates Cup stuff, and into the meat of the regular season. That's all I got today. Tomorrow we'll dig in a bit on like overall NBA landscape, take a breath, look at the standings, look at the power rankings, all that stuff. We'll preview the matchup for the Wolves here on Friday night, as well as they're finally back in action against Golden State on a one-game road trip before they come back home for a few games at Target Center. We'll do that on tomorrow's show. Big thank you for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every single day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere. That includes YouTube as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. Wherever you like to listen to podcasts, you can find Locked On Wolves. You can also watch on the Locked On Sports Minnesota app on both Roku and Amazon Fire TV. A reminder that if this show made your Spotify Wrapped, you can prove it on social media to secure a free month of our brand new Everydayer Club that I talked about earlier. All you got to do is tag our national Locked On Podcast Network account on any social platform, and we'll drop you a code from Locked On. Be one of the first to join the Everydayer Club. You'll get this show ad-free and exclusive access to the members-only Discord channel. So be sure to do that on social media. Post that screenshot of your Spotify Wrapped Also, if you just want to straight sign up, head to lockedonwolves.supercast.com. You can sign up today. Of course, this show's part of that very same Locked On Network, your local experts on all the biggest stories. Once again, I'm Ben Beecken. This is the Locked On Wolves podcast, and we'll catch you next time.